Let's move on to the next illegal thing that Donald Trump did. Remember, we were upset about the vote that didn't take place, or I should say, Harris did not return the timing of the vote, approving of it one last member of the National Labor Relations Board. It was never clear to me exactly what the dynamic was with this, whether Harris was unaware or was contacted too late about this vote or whatever. It's a vote that should have happened way earlier. But Manchin and Sinema showed up. They voted against it. And a seat that could have been occupied until 2026 by a Democratic appointee was not appointed. Well, turns out that was sort of irrelevant because what Donald Trump did have the ability to do was to fire the U.S. Labor Board, the National Labor Relations Board's general counsel. Joe Biden did that on day one, more or less. When he was president, not a sitting member of the committee. The general counsel, though, has a lot of authority to determine which cases are prosecuted by the agency. As you know, Abruzzo was probably by far the best general counsel that we've had in the National Labor Relations Board in, I think, probably, I don't know, maybe close to my lifetime, at least 40 years. They also had the ability to set sort of long-term policies and set up dynamics like, if you don't recognize the union within 2 months after they voted for it, it becomes an unfair labor practice and immediately go into arbitration. I mean, those type of policies, ones that give, that attempt to even the playing field between unions and management, because so much of that has been tilted towards management. Early on, they gave the ability of workers to organize on company grounds because that's where the workers are. And that made all the difference in the world for those first Amazon unions.
Right.
Trump had the authority to fire her, and he did so. But then he did something that was completely unprecedented in 90 years of the National Labor Relations Board, which was established by the National Labor Relations Act. He fired General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, but he has now fired a member of the board, Gwyn Wilcox. And the National Labor Relations Board cannot issue decisions unless it has a quorum of at least 3 members. And now there's only 2. 1 Republican and 1 Democratic member.
So there were 2 vacancies, including the one that Sam just referenced. Now, if
there's
this firing
3.
goes through, which we have all reason to believe that it will, there will be 3. And Trump could just decide not to fill this seat, and it would deadlock the NLRB for his entire term.
And he could do that. And essentially, they would not adjudicate any type of labor disputes. And who do you think wins in those situations?
Populism.
Her term was to end in August of 2028. The only way that you're allowed under the National Labor Relations Act to fire a National Labor Relations Board member is upon notice and hearing for neglect of duty or malfeasance in office, but for no other cause. So again, they want to take this, she's sued as of, I think, today. And they want this to go to the Supreme Court because, as you know, there have been many corporations that have been trying to basically say the National Labor Relations Board is unconstitutional.
You want to know the 2 biggest ones who are suing over that?
Musk
and Amazon. SpaceX and Amazon are suing over the constitutionality of the NLRB. So as we said in reference to Trump basically freezing all federal spending and saying, I'm just going to do so because I'm King Trump, this is another way for him to goad the Supreme Court into taking up these cases. And it's kind of nudging them. Take up Elon's case, my buddy. Take up Jeff Bezos' case. He's my new buddy. blow apart the NLRB and kill the federal agency that's responsible for adjudicating union elections and labor disputes.
Yep.
That's what they're trying to do. And I'm sure that Sean Fain is taking notice. General strike in 2028 is still on that calendar.
DeepSeek Thoughts also says Trader Joe's is in on that too, and I think that is the case. I think they're still part of that suit. And I mean, so we're going to talk about people unionizing or attempting to in the absence of a National Labor Relations Board. And it's going to be a different process, I would imagine. And we're going to be, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking to a lot of, I would imagine over the next couple of months, we're going to be talking to union people. And folks can unionize. They just may not have the same rights or protections within the context of that union. But you're going to hear of a lot more people getting fired if they try and unionize because they have no recourse. Mm-hmm. So we will see what the Supreme Court does, but it's 6-3. We're not at 5-4 territory anymore. This is 6-3. You can afford to lose a vote on the National Labor Relations Board existence. You can afford to lose a vote on the Impoundment Control Act. So we will see. We will see. Brooklyn Best asks, where's the hope? Tune in next week. I mean, look, the National Labor Relations Act is only 90 years old or so. So there was a time where we didn't have it, and there were unions, and they were very strong then. And in some respects, you know, maybe this enhances parts of not necessarily the union movement in terms of its like sort of like legal abilities, but in terms of like its solidarity.
Yep.
I mean, 2028, May 1st, 2028, general strike. We'll see. We'll see. We got a lot more to talk about just in terms of like thousands arrested in ICE raids. Presumably they're all criminals, right? They've all committed criminal acts. We could also talk about the supposed win that Trump had with Colombia, which in fact turns out not to be a win. Or we could talk about the fact that there is the largest outbreak of TB in the country's history in I don't know how many I think it's in the history of the country.
Yeah.
And do you know what the CDC is doing about it? We don't know because they're not allowed to put out a single press release. Mm-hmm. Do you know how the CDC is contacting maybe agencies outside of Kansas? Like, hey, there may be a problem here. Well, they're not because they're not allowed to contact anybody outside of their own agency. Just if you do have a belief in a higher power, I would start with asking that higher power not to expand the bird flu outbreak.
Please. Please.
Crunchy. ICE has already begun conducting raids here in Atlanta. This is troubling on its surface, but now our pediatric staff are stuck in this ridiculous situation where they either comply with potentially illegal demands from these goons to release medical records, or they refuse to comply and are arrested for obstruction. Our staff are legitimately afraid to show up for work, and management has no advice for them. This is so effing stupid. Yep. I mean, all I can say is like, despite our massive issues with the Biden administration and Harris's failure to address those, even hypothetically in her campaign, we are now seeing why we spent so much time advocating to vote against Trump. I mean, I think for most of you, none of this is a surprise.
Yeah.
And in the final analysis, it's a failure on part of Biden's and of Harris's and of their campaigns, both of their campaigns, and of the Democrats nationally. And they're doing an absolute garbage job right now, too, incidentally. But this is where we're at. I mean, on some level, we can look backwards. But part of the reason why I get so frustrated at this sort of these definitive notions of autopsies is like, we don't know where the American public's going to be 6 months from now. Never mind, in January. And so rising to the moment in January is very different than it will be in June, because the moment's going to be very, very different. But it turns out the moment's going to be pretty different by February, 15th. But we will, I do have a couple words of critique of the way that Democrats are reacting. I mean, aside from like all of this sort of capitulation we're watching, and this, we can work with this, and the sort of like the essentially agreeing with sort of some of the narratives about immigrants and whatever it is. Like, and I'm not that concerned with like, voting for certain nominees, because there's no way to stop these nominees. And the fights that are picked should be fights that can be, at the very least, either won or educational for the public. But so far, I'm not seeing much from the Democrats on anything, on messaging any of this stuff. And it's not like this stuff was, I can tell you, 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever it was, on November 8th or 9th, we were in this office saying, we got to figure out where we can find reporting about what's going to go in the agencies, because they're going to come right for the operations of government. So the idea that, Democrats, lawmakers, whomever, didn't have time to see this. We're sitting in a closet in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, this is actually a nice office. I like it.
Yeah.
But my point being, I mean, there's nothing behind that wall over there. There's no team of like 40 research analysts.
Yeah, right.
This is not, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see this coming. But start figuring out how you're going to resist on a daily basis.
Yep.
You hate the word resistance, but it sort of didn't work out last time. But
we still have to. It doesn't matter if it was cringe.
And
Sorry,
listen,
I have a stuffy nose, but
maybe we should sell stickers saying Trump did this, and you could start putting stickers on a box of eggs.
I also think that resistance idea almost takes more import now when it seems that so many institutional players, both in Democratic politics and then in the press, just have zero interest in doing it now.
Yeah.
Like, it almost seems like more I think pressing now, knowing that like capitulation and abdication is kind of the in thing right now.
well, he's even more dangerous now, which is incredible. Like that we focus so much of our energy on Russia Gate, basically, which, I think that Donald Trump had an improper relationship with Putin and Russian oligarchs. I get it. But was that the smartest political way to attack this guy? I think the obvious answer is no.
From the beginning in 2016 in that race, they did not want to implicate the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Donald Trump was not sitting in Trump Tower going like, I can't wait to deal with this Impoundment Control Act. He wasn't sitting in 2015 going like, this, my long-term play is to defund the agencies. All of these ideas are Republican ideas. All of them. This is the Republican Party. And, you know, the idea of cleaving him from the Republican Party at any time was always a disaster. And now we're just seeing it. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.